Welcome to the Traders Help Desk online video collection. In this video I'm going to answer the question that I get asked the most. How well does the THD ADX work for determining market direction on the lower time frames? Now, to really understand what I'm talking about here, you have to know basics of the THD ADX, and that is the Magenta Peak. If the ADX is greater than 50, the market is trending. If a Magenta Peak forms, price should pull back to the ATR, and that is the plus sign that you will see on my charts. Now this is core of the THD ADX. Yesterday morning at 4:28 in the morning, I sent out an email to all of my subscribers and posted on the blog that we had several currencies in overbought and oversold conditions. And this meant that the THD ADX value was greater than 70. These specific currencies, and I did include gold, were circled in yellow, and I went on to explain what to expect. Now, I also reminded my users that the Magenta Peak had to come in for these to create the reversals on the lower time frames. This could set the mood for Friday or for next week. So the futures portion of it, as you can see over on the right hand side, the euro was circled, the gold market was circled, the Swiss franc, the Aussie. Now the Aussie, this is one that you would need to look at because there had been a Magenta Peak that was blue, meaning it was forming a downtrend. As you can see on the 180, it was because it was over 51. This is going to be important when you start looking at the charts. Then on the Japanese yen, we had the 720, the 1440, and the weekly, all with high ADX values. We also had the British pound 180 with a high ADX value. So let's see what happened. On the euro, the peak did come in. Actually, it was around 6:30 in the morning when the peak came in. And what happened? It pulled back 95 ticks to the ATR. So we knew that this movement would happen as soon as this peak came in. On gold, it moved 330 ticks back to the ATR. Again, your peak came in over here, and then it proceeded to pull back to the ATR, which actually coincides with the slow moving average. On the Swiss franc, 84 ticks back to the ATR. Again, this is where your peak started to come in, and then you actually got confirmation of it on this bar, pulls back 84 ticks. On the Aussie dollar, what happened? As you can see, the peak formed over here, actually occurred on this bar, and it resulted in a 93 tick move back to the ATR. On the British pound, Magenta Peak came in, pulls back to the ATR. Okay, I also sent out the spot Forex radar screen, and this was within one window, and you can see that I circled the euro yen, British pound yen, the Swiss franc yen, the USD yen, and the Aussie yen. Now let's see what happens on them. On the euro yen, what happened? The peak did come in, and this is more of a flat peak, but if you were new to THD, you would not have known that. However, when you go down in time looking for your entry, we expect the ATR to flip from blue to red because this is a blue Magenta Peak. That occurs. And then price begins to pull back to the ATR. You see you have a red Magenta Peak here. Price starts to pull back to the ATR. As it approaches the ATR, you see you have an increase in volume. This closed greater than the open. This is read as a blue volume bar. That one little detail told you not to take a trade on the euro yen. On the British pound yen, what happened? The same scenario. It's a flat Magenta Peak. Price flips the ATR, which is what we would be anticipating when the magenta dot shows up. Then as it approaches the ATR, again you get an increase in volume. This is telling us not to take the trade because it's going to flip the ATR. Swiss franc yen, exactly the same scenario. You get the magenta dot, and this actually looks like a good magenta peak. You go down to the 180, flips the ATR, it's approaching the ATR again, and does so on increasing volume. Again, it's going to flip the ATR again. This is not an entry for us. On the USD, JPY, and the Aussie yen, what happened? The magenta peak did not appear. So how well did the THD ADX actually identify the market movement on the lower time frames? On the future side, the high ADX values were 6 that I identified. The magenta peak appeared on 5 of them, and price actually pulled back to the ATR on 5 of the markets that I identified. On the spot Forex side, we had 5 high ADX values. The magenta peak appeared on 3. None of the 3 pulled back to the ATR. And if you knew our trade setups and how to trade multiple time frames, then you did not have any setup appear on the 3 markets that had the magenta dot. On the future side, all 5 of them pulled back to the ATR. On the spot side, we had 3 potentials. None of them pulled back to the ATR.